Not only do I turn my volume down, I plug in a wire that suggests I've got headphones in, even though there's no headphones on the other end of the wire, which also acts as a foolproof muting system.
I don't quite go that far, but I respect that you do.
You what say?
I don't go that far. I hit mute on my laptop, and I trust that works.
Doesn't that say it all?
I appreciate that you've gone that far, though, because I would imagine.
Yeah.
I've got to imagine, and I don't remember specifically, but, we've done this for 10 years now. I reckon once or twice my laptop's made noise. I've tried to look something up mid-podcast, and an advert has played, or,
You've tried to pass it off as a fart. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Chris, I try to pass everything off as a fart. Hey Dan, this cup of tea is awful. It's disgusting. What did you do? Oh, sorry, I farted.
And often when you say you've genuinely farted, it's because you've shat yourself.
Yeah.
We should record a podcast.
Yeah. I pass everything off as a fart, mate. Oh no, you've lost the keys to your house. Yeah, sorry, I farted.
What, and the gust of wind blew them away?
Yeah. Yeah, you can fill the rest in yourself. That's what I like to do, is just leave the person I'm speaking to work out how me farting has anything to do with the thing that's in question.
And I don't know whether this is in at this point. All I know is that we literally, before recording, we literally were like, right, we're on a quite tight time frame. But having said that, you're
Famous
not much of a farter, aren't you? In my memory, I don't remember you farting a lot.
No, I wouldn't describe myself as an abnormally frequent farter. I got to imagine I'm in the sort of just average amount of farting bracket.
Yeah, it's very dependent on what I've eaten for me.
Well, yeah, I think that's probably true for everyone. It's just that not everyone does what we do, which is like tries to eat well for a few days and then fails miserably.
Yeah, and then binges on bad food that would have equated to like has
a week's worth of
eats well for the. I've done that, mate. I've done before where I've eaten incredibly well during the week and then literally had a week's worth of over calories in a weekend.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. You sort of talk about how it's very much dependent on what you're eating. Well, yeah, because you're trying to do the right thing for a handful of days, and then getting it wrong for another handful of days, and that's gonna cause fluctuating responses from your body, I assume. That tracks as far as I can tell. Why is this happening, this conversation? I do love that it's always the death knell. The minute one of us says we've got to be a bit tighter today, let's get cracking, is the minute we decide
it's not
dick about.
It's not even like an optional. If we're not done by that time, I'll have no choice but to just be like, right, over to Dan, and you'll have to be like, my name's Dan Doolan. He was Chris Billingham.
Yeah, we got plenty of time. But let's immediately say roll the titles, I guess. Is that the thing?
Yep. Roll the titles.
Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews. For the second podcast in a while, I've actually just startled my cat by introducing the podcast. I love it. We did that a few weeks ago as well. I can't remember if it was on this or anything but Static, but I enjoy startling my cat.
The cat's like, you still doing this shit?
It's been 10 years, mate. What are you doing? No, to be fair, the podcast is older than the cat. We started the podcast in June. We got the cat in August.
Yeah.
So the cat is 2 months younger. Now shut up and let your big brother make noise.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's weird.
The cat needs to learn some respect.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to the world of Rewind Reviews, where two idiots talk about movies they vaguely remember. This week, we're talking about the movie Predator, an absolute favourite of mine, one I'm very excited about this year particularly, because a couple of days following the release of this, over here in the UK it'll be on Disney+, in America it'll be on Hulu, they're releasing Prey, Dan Trachtenberg's new movie, which is a sort of loose Predator. Well, it's a Predator movie, but it's not like a numbered Predator sequel. It's not called like Predator 3 or whatever. But it's Yeah, it's Native Americans going up against a predator with their sort of more primitive weapons. I'm very excited about it. It looks great. And so with that trailer having just dropped for us in the past, because we're recording this ahead, I was just in the mood to watch this movie. So that's why I selected it this week. So we'll start with our history with the film, Chris. I mean, obviously, I've already hinted that I have, loved this film, since youth. I am not under the impression that you have much of a history with this, but I could be wrong.
No, none. In fact, I hadn't seen it. I thought I'd maybe seen it, but I think I'd seen either Rambo or, which is obviously, Stallone. I know that. But I think the film that I actually thought I'd seen this. I couldn't work out if it was this or The Thing. It was actually The Thing that I watched with Ronnie. Obviously, very similar premises, very different movies.
Very different movies. Yes, agreed.
So no, literally no history with this. I've only seen Alien and Aliens, and that's sort of my entire exposure to the aliens, the predators, the worlds.
Yeah, worlds that
really
were not initially.
I did some.
We're not initially shared. That was a thing that.
What's funny is it feels like both franchises still, like, if you go on, I'm like, where does this go from here after watching it? So I'm searching around on the Wikipedia and stuff, and I'm like, well, the Predator Wikipedia doesn't mention Alien v Predator, and there's a separate Wikipedia, as if the Predator franchise is going, yeah, no, that's nothing to do with us. Trying to pass it off as
which is funny because
separate thing.
Because I don't want to point fingers here, but it is the Predator franchise's fault that happened. The second movie, which I guess we'll get to at some point, because the second one I don't really remember. Oh God, sorry, there's a child shouting outside the window, which was open for my cat's benefit, but now I'm thinking about closing. I don't know if the listeners can hear that. He's moving on.
Well,
it's fine.
Dan, if I'm not allowed to sit with the window open or a fan on, you got to suffer the same as me, my friend.
I thought I'd get away with it. I'm going to give it one more go. If another noise comes through, I'll shut the window. I can't, otherwise I'm going to die. I don't want to die on the podcast. That's a terrible.
For listeners,
form.
I think the technical term is fucking warm at the moment in the UK.
Yeah, so it's that point in the year where we complain on all of our podcasts about that, because while podcasting, you can't have a fan on for the noise reasons, and you can't have a window open for noise reasons. So yeah. Anyway, it'd be very unprofessional of me to die on podcasts. So for now, the window remains open, but one more noise comes through, I will probably close it. So yeah, it's Predator 2's fault, because as a very small nod to the Alien franchise, which actually kind of inspired Predator. I mean, they were pitching Predator around Hollywood as Alien in a Jungle, because the first Alien movie had come out at that point, maybe the second, but I think particularly the first. It's humanity, or a small group of people versus this sort of unstoppable force, and they're sort of trapped in this location with it. There is a lot of Alien in the DNA of this movie in ways. It's approached very differently. It's approached from this hyper masculine sort of action movie approach rather than the full on horror approach of the first Alien. But there's certainly a lot of it in there. And as a nod to that, the director, I think, the writer of the second Predator movie had a little because the Predator collects skulls. There's a bit where you see the skulls the Predator of the second movie has collected, and one of them is the skull of an alien. And it was just supposed to be a little nod. But I'm not going to lie, little Dan saw that, and it was like my world expanded. It was Nick Fury coming in to talk to Tony Stark. The idea that those two universes were in the same captured my little imagination, and I imagine the imagination of many people. Hence, after then several years of comics and books that tried to throw them together to sort of tell that story, eventually they bowed and just did movies. But those movies are so ridiculous. They're maybe we'll get to those at one point, because those movies are insane. So if we do that, then we'll cover it. But yeah.
So specifically this movie, then you watched it too young, I'm guessing. Let me guess the story. Your nan had a video store. You watched the movie too young. I'm joking.
No, you are, and I swear to God, you are spot on. So she had this video. My nan loved horror movies specifically. So she had this one in her house from I don't know if she bought like because with rental copies, when a movie first comes out, you get loads of copies of the movie, and then as it gets less popular, you sort of sell off, like in a cheap bargain bin, the old rental copies. I don't know if they were ever supposed to do that, but they all the video stores would eventually do that. She had a reasonably large collection. I had no idea what the movie was at all. I didn't know it was a movie with an alien in it. I didn't know anything about it. I just saw Arnold Schwarzenegger on the cover. And one night because they'd occasionally, because I was like, at this point, I don't know. I don't know if I was crazy young when I saw this one, because this is after we came back from Ireland, so I was probably still too young, but like not as young as I've been with some of the others. I think I was probably like 12, like 13.
Right.
And
right.
I was old enough to be left in the house alone for a couple of hours. So they went out to like the pub down the road for a couple hours one Friday night or something. And they were just happy to leave me behind because like I didn't really want to go anyway. So I just rifled through the video collection, picked up something that I thought looked interesting and put it on, and it was this movie. And I cannot express to you, Chris, what this movie is like with zero information. Like, it's an experience few people will have these days, because I open the movie and it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie. There's no alien. The opening shots kind of hint at that, but like you don't really know what's going on in those opening shots. And then it's just a movie about a group of commandos going into the jungle. And completing some sort of mission. And then what it becomes, and the slow discovery of the thing that's stalking them, and the reveal of what it looks like slowly across the movie, is so effective as a child, as a new viewer. These days, you can't have that experience, though. There is no way through cultural osmosis you didn't have an image of what a predator looked like in your head. Right? Like, they're famous. It's an iconic design. It's an incredible Stan Winston design. No doubt you knew what was running around in this movie. Or had at least a vague image of what it looked like. So yeah, I found that very enthralling as a child. And then immediately watched the second one, because already out, I was 12, this was much longer, and was less impressed. I'd say immediately, probably like then, a couple of days later or whatever. But yeah, less impressed with the sequel. Even as a kid. So this doesn't feel the same. The sequel's not terrible, I don't think, from memory, but I remember being disappointed.
Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, that's kind of my history with the film. I don't know how. So as a transition into discussion of the film, like, how was that for you? Was there still an element of discovery to this, with the information you had, or?
I knew what a predator looked like. I knew that it was Arnold Schwarzenegger running around the jungle fighting a predator. Mm-hmm. The first shot surprised me because it's so like Star Trek vibes, that first shot, and then it just cuts to a war movie in the jungle. To
the point where you almost forget that shot exists once you're 10 minutes in.
Yeah, because it takes it's really, in my experience, it's really interesting because it's not like I really enjoyed it. But I kind of sit in this, sometimes, and it's weird because you shouldn't do this when you watch a movie for the purpose of reviewing it critically. But sometimes you just watch a movie and you just let it wash over you and you have a good old time. Like, and you watch Arnold Schwarzenegger running around the jungle, and that appeals to you. And it's so weird because if someone were to sit here and go, this film is incredible because the slow build of tension, the action sequences are amazing, the slow reveal of what it is, the music, some of the effects are actually brilliant. The Predator looks amazing. It has creepy moments where the Predator appears behind Arnold and he doesn't realize at first. It has tense moments where they're working out where it is to shoot it. It has high stakes action and it's amazing. I'd go, yeah, you're right. It's amazing for all those reasons. It's brilliant. And if someone was to sit here and go, why do they bother with the decoy mission at the beginning? Because, you think that maybe the fact that he's been tricked is maybe those two characters are going to be at loggerheads for the rest of the movie, or loggerheads, whatever the phrase is, for the rest of the movie, and then that's going to cause tension and impact the way they fight this thing. And none of that happens. And it feels almost a little bit redundant that the mission at the beginning was a trick. And actually, maybe to some degree, there's maybe 10 minutes too much of that mission at the beginning, where it's just mindless action for the sake of it. And the Predator's actual face reveal is a little bit comical, as is the point where he puts down his weapons. And whilst it is, a mark of respect for Arnold as a competitor, the image of them punching each other in the face feels a bit ridiculous. And the movie does get more and more ridiculous, and almost, on some of the action towards the end, almost verge into satire. Let's not forget he's beaten by, a home. It basically turns into Home Alone in the jungle in the last 10 minutes, and the Predator is ultimately beaten by something being dropped on its head. If someone was to say all of that, I'd go, yeah, no, I can see what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? And I almost haven't formed an opinion of my own but it's not like I'm torn, because I enjoyed the movie. I let it entertain me. I had a good time watching this movie. So it's not like I'm torn. I had a good time, but I completely recognise that I think this movie has some incredible highs, but also some flaws that, if you have the right relationship with this movie, I don't think you particularly notice. And I'm not talking about you specifically here. We are both quite good at watching movies we loved as children and recognizing the flaws and discussing them. So I'm not saying you specifically, but I've watched reviews of reviewers delving into this movie, and none of them that watched it at exactly the right age. You know what I mean? Their teenage youth years, where it was just explosions and madness. And they're not acknowledging of those flaws that I think are there. So I'm not torn about this movie. I really enjoyed it, but I'm also sat here going, there's some stuff in it that if someone were to watch it now in a modern context as an adult, because also some of the dialogue at the beginning is horrific.
The dialogue top to bottom is dreadful.
Yeah, if someone was to watch this, I think if you've never seen this movie before and you're watching it now as an adult, the more you go, I'm along for the ride, the more you're going to enjoy this. I would completely understand if someone was to sit here and say it's got some flaws. So yeah, it was a really interesting experience. I feel like it sounds like I'm torn. I'm not. I had a good time. I would recommend this movie. The set pieces alone, considering it was filmed in the 80s, I would recommend this movie. But there are also some stuff that you look at with sort of a critical eye and go, come on now.
Yeah, it's interesting that. Very interesting. So I watched this movie slightly. A little heads up and a warning to our listeners here, because I'm freewheeling it this week, baby. I've gone mad. I have no notes at all.
Oh, baby.
I know. I literally, Chris, I made myself some popcorn. I sat down, I stuck it on, and I just let it happen. I just didn't think and that is exactly. It's so funny that that this is the week I've done that, because you actually also, it seems, very much did that. And I think this is a great time if you just sort of let it happen. Yeah. And I do think you're right. I do think there are things that are a little bit maybe. I mean, the one that stuck out there that I didn't quite agree with. I do think when he takes the mask off, I still think that moment works perfectly for me. When he takes the mask off, reveals the face, because I think the effect is so good, and I think
you know what. Sorry to interrupt you. I think that is what you were talking about earlier with the cultural interpretation. In my head, a predator looks like it looks without the mask.
Yes.
So whatever was revealed under that mask was going to make me go, oh, really? Oh, okay.
Right.
Because
I wondered about that, because it's sort of like a cultural
wise,
osmosis thing where you already knew what was under the mask, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so aware pop culture wise of that. Yes. That whatever was taken off, whenever that mask was taken off, I was going to go, Oh, I thought it was the mask. Like, who knew?
Right. Yeah. So for me, like the mask coming off, but as a child was obviously very effective because it was this brand new thing that was being revealed. But even now watching it, I just marveled at how good that effect is, and also as a moment in the movie, just from a sort of a character point of view, that almost, you're right. The putting the weapon down thing is weird and cheesy and like why, but it does tell you something about the character. But it is slightly unnecessary on the grounds of taking the mask off has the same impact for me, character-wise. That's him taking off a piece of armor, protection, showing his face. That's him acknowledging and respecting the challenge Arnold has presented with him with, right? You don't need dropping the gun and them going punch for punch, which does, I think, I wouldn't say harm the final act, but it is definitely the weakest element of the final act. I am much more content with the sort of back and forth that happens prior to that, where it's like they're both trying to outwit each other with tactics rather than outright physical strength. I don't mind that it's a trap that catches the predator at the end, because for me, like the idea of this movie is actually almost brain over brawn a little bit. The reason the Predator is so effective initially, to me, and I know that's definitely not Arnold's interpretation of this movie. Arnold's interpretation of this movie is that it's great that everyone is 6 foot odd and has arms wider than their heads. Arnold has specifically said he thinks that's why this movie was successful. But like with other John McTiernan films we've talked about, particularly Die Hard, which, by the way, I'd forgotten this was a John McTiernan movie. So for those of you going, you've just reviewed 3 John McTiernan movies in the space of 7 episodes of Rewind Reviews. I am sorry. I'd forgotten he was the director of this film until I put it on and his name popped up and I went, fucking hell, him again. I love John
immediately
McTiernan.
Seeing what else he's done to choose him next time.
Yeah. You're going to pick another John McTiernan. But for me, what this movie is kind of about is at first, they're all brawn. They're all just firing giant machine guns, running around with, big knives, trying to just brute force this thing. But this thing is outsmarting them. And in the end, Arnold doesn't brute force his way over the Predator. The Predator's 7 foot odd tall. He's not going to do that. It's not going to work. It's a means to get the Predator into a situation where his trap works. And even then, the Predator is too smart to fall for the spikes and goes round. The giant log then falls on his head. But, in a very simplistic way, and the movie's message is extraordinarily simplistic. The movie's point is very simplistic, but it is about outthinking your enemy in the end. And it's why the Predator is so effective in the early parts of the movie and takes out such a huge portion of this crew, like a horror film, just one by one getting knocked off by this thing that's hunting them.
Do they kind of explain why, has Arnold just gone too far in attacking it that he can't just, because he's worked out that he's not attacking people that don't have a weapon. So does Arnold not have the option of just dropping his weapons? Is the logic that he's gone too far that the Predator knows he has attacked him, so will continue to hunt him?
Yeah, I think that's I think once you're sort of seen to have a weapon and be defending, the assumption is the Predator would identify you as a threat and continue to hunt you. That's why I think he gets mad when I forget the name of the character. 1 second. When Anna picks up a weapon and he knocks it out of her hand and tells her to run. I think the reason he's telling her to run is now she's a target too, potentially. So I think that's the logic. Although I guess they don't really know that. I mean, a lot of this movie is them guessing the rules of the world, because obviously the Predator doesn't exactly speak English and explain himself, so they're having to guess from the Predator's behaviors. But that's another thing I love about this movie, is the sense of discovery for what the Predator can and cannot do, and what the weapons are, what the tactics are. I don't know. There's just and also this movie is like a masterclass in visual storytelling. So little dialogue in the sort of second and third acts of this movie. which is a mercy, really, because the dialogue is awful when it is there. But
I think pretty much the only line for like 20 minutes isn't the only line for 20 minutes like, "You're one ugly motherfucker."
Yeah. That and the last line he speaks to Anna before she escapes, which is "Get to the chopper," which is obviously a very famous.
Oh mate, he says "Get to the chopper." He's banging on about that chopper for about 30 minutes of this.
Yeah,
movie.
he is. Yeah, he is.
Do you agree? One thing I'm fascinated to know whether like I'm being unfair or I am right, like from a critical eye. The notion of the opening mission. And, does it need to be a trick specifically? Does it go on a little bit too long? What are your thoughts on that critique?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think that is a valid critique for someone coming into the movie knowing it's a Predator movie. Because you're going, well, can you get to the alien, please? That's the thing.
Mate,
that's what
literally
I'm checking.
I'm checking my watch, going, I thought this was a movie about an alien,
right?
Like, stalking them.
100%. But I will say, to an uninitiated audience, that was like one of the most genius elements of the film. And I have no idea if it's intent or an accident or what. But when I sit down to watch that movie as a kid, and it was an action movie that turned into this, being hunted by an alien movie, that was so effective because of how much time they dedicate to that opening action scene. It also establishes, of course, how effective the team are, how good they are at their jobs. Like, it's kind of setting up the characters as an imposing force. So when they start getting immediately and very easily slaughtered, you sort of go, wow. Like, the idea is, like, that they're capable of handling themselves. But you're right. It absolutely, in the context of it's going to be an alien movie, you cut that scene down 100% structurally, to ensure that you get to the point quicker, because you can have that message of it showing how much of an effective team they are in half the time. But for building up tension for an uninitiated viewer, and even when I rewatch it now, I still marvel and remember how that felt, and that is absolutely, and I fully acknowledge this, a pure nostalgia thing. But again, if somebody managed to have their fingers in their ears most of their lives and la 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 la, every time Predator came up and had no idea what this movie was, I still think that would work, adult or child. So, I really do.
Here's the question, because what you've talked about there as a kid is, and this isn't me necessarily, this is one of those things where I'm challenging for the sake of discussion.
No, absolutely. Continue to challenge, for sure.
Agreeing. What you talked about there as a kid is the tension and the plot. Do you think if you'd put your fingers in your ears and you watched it for the first time as an adult,
yes,
you specifically would be sat there going, they don't really make me feel for this group. The characters are kind of defined a little bit by archetypes, but not defined enough that makes me feel anything when they do. Because I had that. I didn't really know who these characters were. They were just bodies to me. And obviously, character as you've gotten older is a big thing for you. Do you think if you watched it fresh now, you'd be going, they don't really define any of these characters but Dutch and maybe the guy who's like Dylan tricked him? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dylan.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that is in a modern day movie. If you put this movie in cinemas tomorrow, and I didn't know what it was, and I went in to see it, I would absolutely have that criticism, 100%. And I think that we again, in acknowledging our biases, for me, modern day critical Dan would tell you, well, if I don't care about these characters, why does the rest of this movie matter? And it's the criticism I levy at Rogue One, and it's the criticism I levy at many movies of this ilk. The only reason I think this still gets away with it for me, with that in mind, that we're looking at it for a biased view, but the reason I think this is slightly different from a movie like Rogue One is that Rogue One really tries to establish intricate, interesting characters and fails, whereas this movie doesn't seem to give a shit about the characters, and very intentionally just goes, no, we'll establish each one has an archetype. That's the nerd one. That's the sort of big brute one. This one's like sort of like slightly more connected to the jungle and is sort of like a bit more of a hunter in himself and can sense that the predator is kind of following. Like, they all get given an archetypal role, and that's just enough to set up the plot of the movie. It's not ever designed to make you care about them at any point.
No.
And because the movie isn't trying to, it's hard to say that it failed. It doesn't do that, but that feels like choice over a movie like Rogue One that really wanted you to care about those people, so that when they meet the end they meet, you're upset by it. Whereas this movie is literally just like, here's today's here's today's victims. Get to know them slightly so you understand who they are by archetype, and then we'll just murder them one by one for funsies.
I don't even think you're, because to be fair, I don't even think you're meant to be. You're not meant to be upset by it. That's also the difference. Like, you're not meant to feel, oh no, that guy who kept making jokes about vaginas has died. I think you're meant to
not
feel
Hawkins, not Hawkins.
I think you're meant to feel that this predator's a threat. You're meant to feel like it's an alien machine going after people and taking them out quite easily one by one, so that at the end, when it's just Arnold versus Predator, or Dutch versus Predator, sorry, you know what that means, and you feel the tension on that front. Because Arnold, even the Dutch character, even he doesn't seem to give a shit about all his friends. Like, this team that's a really big unit, and they do it together, and only them, and they don't allow outsiders in. And like, he doesn't seem, he's bothered about staying alive, which I suppose fits the character in a way.
I think they've always said, haven't they, that a lot of the reasons, or not a lot of the reasons, but some of the reason veterans come back with like real trauma is because they're forced in the moment to always push it down, because it's survival, right? In the moment, you can't sit there and cry about your buddy, because quite frankly, that'll get you killed too, So they're kind of trained to suppress, which is obviously not mentally healthy thing to do.
a slight. This is a detour here, but what we're talking about Arnold and that character, and then obviously we're in spoiler territory anyway.
Mm-hmm. If it's not clear enough, we recommend this movie. It's on Disney Plus in the UK. I don't know where it's available in the States, but it's brilliant. It's classic.
Big recommend for sure. Mm-hmm. As far as I can tell, Arnold doesn't come back to this franchise.
No, he doesn't. You know what? That's a really good point. No, he never comes back. He's not come back.
Seems mad to me. This big movie star who's not afraid to fucking turn up in any shite sequel for the sake of it. If you look at the Terminator
franchise, 100%.
Like, so it bamboozles me that no one's pulled that trigger on.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, he survives the movie.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and
you're right.
and equally that the Anna character. She doesn't seem to come back either.
No.
Like, it seems nuts to me that in all the kind of sequel variations they've tried of this, they've not, pulled that trigger.
That's a really fucking good point. I honestly, you're right. I'm embarrassed to say that's genuinely never occurred to me.
I just find it so weird.
Yeah.
But, anyway, like...
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, the only sequel he would have probably been very likely to turn up in is the Shane Black directed. Because for those who don't know, so Shane Black plays Hawkins in this. And Shane Black is an actor / writer-director. And he was only actually cast in this movie to keep him near Joel Silver, the producer of this movie, because at the time Shane Black was writing a script for Joel Silver. So Shane Black was writing a script on the set for Silver and then doing his scenes. But Shane Black obviously went on to, write and direct like movies like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and he did Iron Man 3. Ton of stuff. But apparently, according to an article that I found here, he turned it down. He was offered and turned it down. And the quote in this article, at least, is, "The sad story is that sometimes studios do a great job with creating sequels, and sometimes they really screw it up bad. And it has all to do with greed. They sometimes want to do it really cheap and make as much money as possible, so they don't hire the right cast or not the right director. It's stupid moves to make."
So evidently he just maybe felt, which is weird for someone that, looked at Terminator Genesis and Salvation and
even
went,
Terminator 3 to some degree.
Yeah. But yeah, apparently
Wow.
that's a quote there.
Well, yeah, so the funny thing is, though, a couple of years ago they did The Predator, which was a Shane Black directed Predator film, which, to be honest, unfortunately did turn out not great. I think most of the film was like passable, and the ending was just an absolute hot mess. Like, it was a real shame. I think there's actually a reasonably enjoyable Predator movie, like a passable one, until the final act, and then it's just like, what the fuck is this? It's awful at that point. So, but you'd think Shane Black, who worked on the original, was in the original. Presumably, I assume, buddies with Arnold now. Those guys all worked together, trained together for this movie. You'd have thought that would have been the pull, some of the original back. But maybe Shane Black didn't even approach Arnold for that one. I don't know. But it's funny. You're right. It's funny that he's more precious about this franchise than he is Terminator, where he's like, fuck it. I'll just make every shitty sequel going.
According to another article, Shane Black offered. Oh, fucking massive pop-up, bugger off. Shane Black offered. The studio wanted a fresher move that featured an evolving cast. They didn't want to hinge the movie on the re-emergence of Schwarzenegger.
Oh, so that was a studio thing. So Black would have tried to bring Dutch back.
Oh, no, apparently. But nevertheless, the director did approach his former co-star. Understandably, and believe me, I completely get it. He said, look, that's kind of a small part, and I don't really want to do that. I'm off to do Terminator with Jim Cameron, basically, all for Jim Cameron. So I totally got it. If I was Schwarzenegger, I'd want to be one of the stars of the film or nothing. So the studio said they didn't want him to be a star of the film. So Shane Black was playing around with, it says here, it would probably be more of a matter of him showing up briefly and just participating at the very end at the climax of the movie.
Right.
So basically, studio didn't want him in the movie in general. Shane Black kind of said, well, okay, let's have him show up at the end. And
like
then Arnold was like, I don't want to do that. Like, no.
Oh, man.
Well, there you go.
Wow.
Anyway,
I mean, to be fair, the sequel. It's worth noting here, just for listeners who are interested in my thoughts on these sequels. The Alien vs Predator movies don't really count. Alien 2 is a bit of a disappointment. I think The Predator isn't great because that final act. The best Predator sequel is Predators, the Adrian Brody one from like the mid-2000s. That's brilliant. That's
the one with Topher Grace as well.
That's
All
that
I know
one. Yeah,
about
that's
movie is
that's
Topher Grace.
that one.
Wow.
It's incredible, mate. It's so good. Which is fun because I like the fact that Alien and Aliens are like the two top Alien movies, one after the other. And if you skip Predator 2, you go from Predator to Predators, and that's like a great movie and then its sequel.
Nice.
I really like Predators. I think Predators is an absolute like stone cold classic, a little hidden gem that no one really watched. I think that was Robert Rodriguez that directed that as well. I had to look that up, but fucking great movie with Topher Grace and Adrian Brody. Loved it, absolutely loved it. It's a proper send up for the original, but with a real twist, with a really fun twist. I'm not gonna talk about, but like they take a different angle on it, but it ends up being a really similar movie while also having a new sort of angle to go at the story from.
Nice. One other big compliment I'd pay this film, and it's a weird one, is that, as in this first one, is that the special effects by no means hold up, but it doesn't feel like they don't hold up because it's treated so well. So these effects and this plot even could feel like a real B movie. It could feel like a TV movie. It could feel like an episode of a bad 90s, 80s sci-fi show. But because it's treated so carefully, and because the actual physical set of the jungle is so effective, because actually in the action sequence...
They filmed in a real jungle in Mexico.
Yeah. And you can tell it's like its own character because Arnold in the action scenes is so effective, because the music is so fucking brilliant and the lighting is so great. the effects, it just feels it feels kind of akin to Star Wars. Do you know what I mean? Not in terms of like the amount, the volume, the level, but even though the special effects are older style, because it's treated with such reverence and everything around it is so effective, you just don't notice the older style CGI in the way that I don't think you really do when you watch the original Star Wars movies either.
Yeah, I think they certainly don't take you out of the film. They've aged slightly, but I, to be honest with you, particularly I think the practical monster effects at the end, like when he takes the mask off, the mandibles move in a weirdly natural way that feel right. Like, it's a surprisingly convincing effect. The effect I think that suffers the most is probably the, and at the time it was really clever the way they did it, but the invisibility. That's kind of not invisibility, the camouflage effect. That's probably the weakest part.
Yeah, but is that deliberate so that they can actually still see that? You know what I mean? It's not meant to be invisible. So.
Yeah. But as an effect,
I guess I
it's the effect that looks the most like a thing they've done with the camera. I suppose it's the thing that's most likely to take you out of the movie. I guess.
I suppose, to be fair as well, I imagine that's one effect that has literally got better and better with every film, so I'm sort of not comparing it to that as well.
Slightly stepping on the trivia here, the way they did it was actually really cool. What they did was they filmed a scene with the actor in like a big red version of the Predator suit, so it's the shape of the Predator suit, but it's like pure red, like because it would contrast well with the jungle behind it to chroma key it out. Because obviously usually you'd use a green or a blue thing for chroma keying out, because it was so much green in the jungle they went for the contrasting color of red, so it stood out from the background, and then they would have the actor run through the set doing whatever in the red, and then they would then get the actor out of the shot and film the exact same shot with no actor in it, but with a wider lens, so it didn't quite line up. It was like slightly warped comparatively, and then you'd lay the shot with the actor in red over it, and then you would chroma key in so that the background palette shot was underneath, and then you would remove the red moment and reveal the thing behind it, and it's what created that perfect shape of the Predator, but the jungle behind it looking kind of warped, like you were looking at it through some sort of like almost like a mirror or some sort of like reflective idea. It you know what? Considering they did it like partially practically like that, like that's kind of genius. Because obviously these days you'd probably just CGI the Predator shape into it or whatever. Like I don't know if you'd use a real actor in a red suit anymore. You might, I don't know. But yeah, I think that's a really simple and kind of ingenious way to create that effect. The only downside to it is because they did do it in camera, using the cameras and the lenses, some shots you're reminded you're watching things through a camera a bit because of it. I do think it mostly works, but yeah, there were definitely some shots where I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that." Especially when it got real close. I think any wide of that looks great, but I think any close-up shot where the Predator fills more of the screen, like there's a shot where he goes to kill someone in his camouflage, and he gets really close to the camera. That one looks not great. That just looks very strange. Yeah, but minor nitpick, not a massive criticism. It totally holds up. I think it's not going to completely remove you from the movie. It's just the weakest element of the effects, I think.
Some of the strongest elements are definitely sort of the war set pieces. Any scene where someone's shooting at someone, any scene with explosion looks fucking great.
Yeah. I mean, that scene, as problematic as it is to have like a really long action sequence at the beginning, for the pacing and the narrative and stuff, that sequence when they raid that camp and kill all those rebels is still like incredible, and it's proper peak cheesy Arnold as well. When he like throws a big machete and the guy gets pinned to the wall and he's like, "Stick around," and then he cracks on with whatever he's doing. It's just like, oh my god, the unnecessary machismo in this room. I kind of love it for that, because the movie obviously gets a lot more serious, a lot more like grounded. Weirdly, when the alien introduces himself into the plot, that's when the movie starts taking itself more seriously.
I don't think it does get more grounded. I think there's just less dialogue.
Yeah, you know, honestly, you might be right. You really might be right, and I think that's like, you know, I think to the movie, definitely to the movie's benefit, because all of the dialogue in the early part of the movie, it almost borders on parody, as Chris I think maybe even said earlier on. You know, you know, you're the best. We got to get the best, and I called you in because that's why. Because you and your team are the best. Well, we work alone. Do you well? You're going to be forced to bring me along this time. Like, it's just all very like overt, cheesy. Everyone just saying the dumb thing, even down to Dylan, you son of a bitch, and they like their hands meet, which has obviously become a meme. You know, when the two arms grab each other and they like tense the muscles and they're trying to like, oh, it's almost like air arm wrestling. It's an iconic scene, and it is incredible. Like, it is like, obviously these two men who have like, you know, particularly Arnold, who dedicated his life to fitness and bodybuilding and like making his arms, you know, again, wider than his head. You know, moments like that are like so absurdly masculine that they play comedy now. Yeah. But at the time, I got to imagine people were like, what badasses they are, you know, smoking cigars and, you know, out muscling each other, you know.
Oh, mate, I imagine men cheering and masturbating in the cinema. Like, yeah, it must have been amazing for them. Like,
was that the point you were kind of worried for the film then? Like, early on, you were just like, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this.
No. I'll be honest. At no point did I particularly think I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this. There was definitely a sense of at the beginning, this scene's going on a while. Where is where's the alien?
Where's the turning point for the movie? Because you know the movie's taking a right hand turn. You're waiting for it to happen. Is that kind of
and the other big thing for me is I'm enjoying the I'm like, oh, that's clever. Like, this guy has sent them on a mission that could get them killed, and they're old friends, but he's done it for the wrong reason. And the notion of two people kind of at war with each other, having to bind together to be at war with this predator, like, was interesting to me. I was like, oh, that's more nuanced than I thought this movie had. Cool. And then that doesn't really get explored. But by the time it doesn't get explored, I'm so taken up by the roller coaster.
Yes.
That, like, I'm just in my head going, oh, that's a shame that didn't get explored. Could have been a better movie for it, maybe, but that doesn't mean I'm not enjoying the good movie that I'm watching, you know, and in some cases, great movie that I'm watching. So that was sort of more, at the beginning, that was more my thing. I was like, I'm surprised that there's this nuance. And then discovered that nuance didn't exist, and I think that's a shame. I think that for me is the biggest, because, you know, I think you know, you can. It may be if everyone's more defined, but as you said, the problem is if you try and make the characters in general more defined, maybe you end up with Rogue One, and that ends up less effective. And this movie, if this movie isn't action scene, it's not as effective. It's not as good if you stop the movie to give people a bit of character stuff. And maybe that's the argument too for what I'm describing. But I think with the other characters, they didn't really lay the pieces. With that, they laid the pieces. But it didn't spoil it for me. It's more, like I said earlier, I can understand if it spoiled it for someone else. Maybe, but I don't. I also can see a world where people would have watched it and not really thought about that, because it is just this action-packed roller coaster, and there's a place for that. There's you know, I enjoyed that. Yep. I really did.
Yeah, no, it's exactly me as well. Just, you know, pop some popcorn, just chilled out, like, just really got taken in by it again. And it's the first time I've seen it in a couple of years. This isn't one I go back to like every year. Like some of the movies we've watched on this podcast, I'm like, I don't even need to rewatch it, really. I'm gonna, because I enjoy it, but like, it's a movie I watch, you know, every so often. It's probably been 7-8 years, I think, since I've seen this film. Easily. You know, it's been a while, so I really did get a kick out of rewatching it and rediscovering some of the middle section of the movie. What did you think about the structure? Because I was shocked in my rewatch to discover it's really 3 films stitched together. Like 3 short films stitched together, 3 sort of 30-minute movies. The first is, you know, your commando movie. The guy's going to the jungle to defeat the group of rebels, and there's a big action scene that sort of tops it off. And then there's the middle section, which is the the group of commandos being knocked off by the Predator one by one, which is kind of like a horror movie trope, and then it's man versus alien. It's this final section of the movie which is basically absolutely dialogueless, sort of a masterclass in visual storytelling.
It really upsets me that you've not referred to that third section as a Home Alone in the jungle with an alien.
I mean, it is that. But, well, it isn't. It isn't. You're right. He goes and preps for it, sets up a bunch of traps and stuff. Yeah. But actually, a lot of those traps don't end up playing too much of a factor into the fight. A lot of the fight is them just like literally going back and forth and, trying to outsmart each other. And he's firing arrows but I guess the arrows are part of the trap. So yeah, I guess you're right. But I guess I just don't like to think of it as that because that makes it inherently more goofy. And I I really love that last scene. It's one of my favorite third acts, maybe from any movie ever, because it's so much of it is communicated brilliantly through like just watching Arnold suss it out. Watching the Predator suss it out. Like it's never it's not through dialogue that it's all being figured out. That's what I think is great about it, is that you're watching these characters learn, like Arnold learning the mud. The mud is a perfect example. Arnold realizing the mud hides him from the Predator is brilliant. Because it happens very naturally. He gets accidentally covered in mud through a not too contrived sequence of events. It makes perfect sense. He'd have had to crawl through the mud to get out of the situation he was in and therefore get covered in it. You could argue that the fact it covers him head to toe is a bit maybe convenient for that moment, but whatever. That's movie magic or whatever. You'd sort of certain amount of suspension disbelief there, and then the Predator not seeing him, you see the realization on his face, no dialogue whatsoever. Later in the movie, he's in the mud. The Predator, we can clearly see the Predator can't see him because of the Predator vision, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Actually, I think it's probably something worth talking about. Then Arnold, hits the water. And you see the mud coming off him, and the movie is visually communicating the trouble. He's not going, "Oh no, my mud!" You don't need that. And that's why that third act is so powerful for me. But it is, as a result, it's a movie of three sections. It really is, and they're all almost completely different from each other. Did you find that jarring? Because I could imagine. I personally don't, but just to clarify, but for the sake of a potentially discussion point, did you bump up against that as a modern viewer? That the three sections are so separate from each other.
1 to 2, yes. I think the first section, as we've sort of covered as well, I think the first section feels very different. And I think that's why it jars so much with me, that I think there's stuff set up that they don't pay off. Less so with 2 to 3, because I think that stuff is set up and then paid off. Because the setup of 2 is, this thing is good at what it's doing, and Arnold's lost his crew. He's going to end up on his own. And then the third is him on his own. So I think 2 goes into 3 a lot easier than 1 goes into 2. And actually, visually, like stylistically, 2 and 3 are closer in a way than, because once you introduce the alien, there's a whole new aesthetic. There's lasers firing about, and there's more CGI and stuff like that. So kind of aesthetically, 2 and 3 match closer than 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. I think Act 1 is the element that is most jarring to the rest of it.
Yeah.
But as you've said, the defense of that makes a fucking good twist if you don't know what's coming.
Yeah. It's the From Dusk Till Dawn effect, isn't it? I don't know if have you seen From Dusk Till Dawn?
No, but Sunshine is another good example of that.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So a lot of people have had the experience where they've said, like, my dad watched from, my aunt or uncle watched From Dusk Till Dawn, and I asked them if they enjoyed it, and they're like, yeah, I was enjoying it for the first 20 minutes. Then there was all these vampires, it's like it's a heist movie for about 25 minutes. It's very similar, basically, in that sense. It's a movie that takes a real turn out of nowhere. I mean, we might get to that at some point on here, but I don't really have a lot of, like, I enjoyed From Dusk Till Dawn, but, like, it's not like one of my big, nostalgic young person film loves. So I guess the day we get to From Dusk Till Dawn is the day we just stop doing this podcast.
Why?
Because we've run out. I've hit the bottom of the barrel.
Mate, I'm not adverse to doing. I'm not about to do it, but I'm not adverse to like doing modern movies. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we're not gonna run out. It's fine.
No, you're right. No. And I mean, we've still got hundreds of movies on the list of this kind of movie anyway. So yeah, absolutely, yeah. I agree with you. No, there's a very, very small chance of us of this needing to really ever stop because there's so many. Which is great because I really enjoy this. This is such a good excuse to watch movies. It's brilliant.
I think the point where we're like, oh, fucking hell, we've gone too far is Die Hard 5, A Good Day to Die Hard. And we will get there. Because
we'll probably get there quite soon at the rate we're going, because apparently, like, you know, that's our bag, because we've already done the first two. We're only, like, you know, we're only a handful of episodes in, so... Actually, we've passed the 50 mark. I was very disappointed to discover that episode 50 of this podcast, Chris, was The Last Action Hero.
Mate, I had a great time with Last Action Hero. Like,
I know. No, you know what? And I do think I was just a bit grumpier that day. Like, thinking back to it, I think I said this on the podcast, but I don't think I gave that a fair shot the way I should have done. So looking at this film in terms of, like, I don't know, it's like cultural impact. It's so hard to separate, like. You know, so it's, you know, okay, let me go back a couple steps there. So recently they've been doing, on the Weekly Planet, they've been talking about the Jurassic films, you know, Jurassic Park through World. Jurassic Park 1, 2, and 3, basically. And, you know, because the new World movie's coming out. And they've been doing a lot of, like, because Nick Mason on that podcast was sort of talking about, he was like, you know, all these Jurassic Park movies, they're basically the same, roughly in quality. He'd kind of forgotten how low the lows are as a franchise, you know, until they watched 3. But it's because you know, culturally, this is a franchise. It's considered a franchise. You've obviously not seen the sequels, I assume, having not seen this one until now.
No.
Do you watch this movie with franchise in mind? Because I can't imagine somebody doesn't watch Jurassic. So if somebody watched Jurassic Park today that had never seen a Jurassic Park movie, they couldn't not watch it without knowing it becomes this huge franchise, right? That it spawns, you know, dozens of movies, eventually brings back legacy characters, all that stuff, right? That's got to be in the back of their mind. Predator has got a similar thing in that it's, you know, spawned many movies over the years, different, you know, varying quality. You know, you think, you know, Alien vs Predator particularly, I think, was like a very, you know, very well publicized movies. Those two movies, well, maybe not the second one. I think the second one went straight to DVD. But like the first Alien vs Predator was quite hyped up, especially when we were young. There's a lot of marketing around for Alien vs Predator. How much of that impacts a viewing like this? You're aware? Are you looking for the franchise's roots in the movie, or are you just letting this be a movie on its own? How hard is it for you to sort of separate the two, I guess, is my question.
Fairly easy in the sense that I'm aware of the franchise for sure, and I'm thinking, I wonder where how this expands. Although, you know, in my head I'm going probably overblown lore and more predators, which seems to be from the video I then watched, looking at the series as a whole. Yep. I seem to be bang on the money there.
Yes.
But there's a lot of, especially in this era, I go into this as someone that's seen Alien, as someone that's seen Die Hard. There's a lot of films that were standalone, and, you know, Home Alone, films that were standalone, had a clear standalone narrative that wrapped up what?
You're so determined. You're so determined with this Home Alone thing to stick.
Oh, no, that wasn't even deliberate. That was just me thinking of films where the first movie is clearly not the beginning of a franchise that they then expand with in those 3 instances not much success. So that was, apart from, you know, great sequels, although with Die Hard, you know, arguably the third. I'm so used to, especially from this era, it being a standalone that becomes a franchise. I didn't really, whilst this film made me intrigued for where it goes next, I didn't assume that would be something they were laying the groundwork for. And you know what? I think cinema's the poorer for it. I think now there's too much, whether a film's got a sequel or not, there's too much laying the groundwork for a wider world in films now, and we don't do enough of this. In general, they don't make movies like this anymore. Like you struggle to get a movie with characters this thin now, I think, and it would be criticised if you did. I think you raised a very good point. This film comes out now, it's not getting the same reaction. They don't make movies like this anymore in general, but that specific non-franchising, they really don't do anymore. No. And I think, this movie, Die Hard, Alien, Home Alone are all better for that.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I think Prey is such an interesting prospect as a semi fan of this franchise. I love this movie. I really like Predators. As a younger person, I guess I watched, maybe to a certain point enjoyed Alien vs Predator. It's hard to imagine that now, because remembering those movies, they're absolutely bonkers. I guess enjoying them for what they are maybe is the better way to phrase that. Prey feels like, because they've gone slightly lower budget, streaming movie. Prey feels like this going back to its roots. Not going to be about the lore or about introducing some new element to what a predator is and can be, but just back to people stuck in a location in the wilderness with a thing hunting them that's alien, and the discovery of that and how it works, and them sort of having to find, ingenious ways of defending themselves using sort of tactics and trying to outsmart the thing. And that's really the core of what this franchise should be. Once this franchise gets into less people trying to figure out what the predator is and more people being aware of what it is and fighting it, that's less interesting. There's a sense of discovery in this movie. As the characters discover what the predator is capable of, you do as an audience member. And there's something very satisfying, I think, in that. And it's a simple idea, but it's an effective one, and it's one that gets lost the more you reveal about what a predator is and looks like and does and says. And the predator is actually, strictly speaking, in terms of screen time, predator is not in a lot of this movie. It's 8 minutes of the movie or something stupid like that, and I think that's to its benefit. And again, you're right, it's they just don't make movies like that anymore. They build in the lore, they build in the threads that you can pull on if you want to make it a franchise. And actually, there's something to be said for the purity of just going, well, here's our story. It's this survival story, and that's what it's about. That's what we're going to spend all of our screen time telling, that story. We're not going to worry about telling or putting in the pieces for a future story. And that's what it is, and what you'll get out of it. And then it's one of the reasons I'm excited for Prey, because I think Dan Trachtenberg, who did 10 Cloverfield Lane, understands that, and he's a very talented filmmaker. So I think I that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of excited for that movie. So yeah, I don't know why this review has turned into a big ad for that one. I guess that's just my excitement for it.
Also that movie inspired us doing this in the first place.
Yes.
And it's a great trade. It's a great poster. The poster of her with the war paint makeup, but it's the green blood of the predator. It looks awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Have you got any other points on this before we hit the triv?
Well, yeah, I think we should do a couple of details if we can, just to talk about certain scenes and specifics of some of what happens, because I feel like we've been a bit more, because I've not done notes, we've talked more generally about the film rather than specifics. So I thought maybe we could drill down to a couple of maybe our favourite scenes or moments as a way to sort of cover some of the more the details. So I'll go first. Quite frankly, I love the guy with the big knife who clearly doesn't really trust Carl Weathers' character Dylan, tells him to turn around, and you're like, what's he doing? He turns around, he gets the knife out, and he looks like he's going to stab him with it, and then he's just got a big scorpion on the end of it, and he's just got it off his back. That was a great
character moment, actually. That moment did say a lot about go a long way to establishing those characters. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, it's just a really fun scene. It creates tension amongst them. It's the first hint we have of the Predator being present because the Predator is watching that exchange happen. I just think it's a really fun scene. It's tiny. It's not a huge part, but you know what? I always remember it. There are bits of this movie that I forget between viewings usually, and I go, "Oh yeah, that's really fun." And I sort of remember it as it happens. But the two moments that will always from the sort of the main, other than the ending and Arnold in the covered in mud and stuff, which I think is just really iconic visually, and you ugly motherfucker, and the sort of the bomb. And the laughter, which always sticks in everyone's memory because it's really iconic. But from the main body of the movie, prior to the third act, the bits that always stick out to me are the scorpion thing and the guy with the minigun just railing the trees, just like, I'm gonna shoot everything while screaming until it's dead. Which is brilliant and insane and so obnoxious and loud and unnecessary, and it's so gratuitous. I love it. Every time that scene is my favourite. I wait for that scene. It's so good.
In general, the sequence of them going after the Predator is great, and the bit with Mac, the two bits that really stood out to me. I think one I've already mentioned: the Predator appearing behind Arnold, and even though it's that dodgy sort of invisible effect, it still looks fucking. In that scene, that effect works really well.
Yes,
because the audience know he's there right behind him, and actually Arnold's acting in that scene is fucking brilliant.
Yeah,
that sort of oh shit reveal in his eyes, the look of fear, like it's awesome. That scene really stood out. And Mac and the other guy in sort of the hedges with I think it's Mac, just like, I think that's the character's name, just like staring at him and being like, I see him. And the other guy being like, I see him too. Like, it's just brilliant. It's so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah, it's great. And to comment on the Arnold thing, I agree with you. I think Arnold's best acting is always his physical performance. He's always very expressive with his body for obvious reasons. His physicality is always going to be a big part of his performances. But he's actually very good.
When you've got a body like mine and Arnold's, men like us just need to floor. I don't know why you laugh. Men like us just need to flaunt that.
Yeah, agreed. But the control he has over his body is almost to be expected, right? He's got all this muscle. You expect him to be able to like physically, do things with his body with real sort of almost like intent and accuracy that another actor maybe doesn't have like that. But it's his facial acting also is really, really good. He's so expressive, and it doesn't surprise you when you see that this movie or Terminator, that he was so successful, because in Terminator, again, it's a movie with very little dialogue for the character, and when he is talking, he's supposed to be robotic and unbelievable. And what's brilliant about his performance in Terminator is the way he, with his face and his eyes and his body movements, he communicates so effectively that he's a machine. The way he like slowly turns his head, but with this very smooth movement, like he's like a computer, like almost calculating the number of degrees his neck must turn to see the thing, and then calculating the number of degrees the head must turn to go back, and then the eyes swishing over as well. And in this movie, he does exactly the same thing. Not exactly the same thing, sorry, I should say, but he's using the same skills to communicate. When he's going one-to-one with the Predator, and he realizes the Predator is behind him, it's his face and his body movement that's telling you he's realized that, because there's no dialogue in this third act. It's all done that way, and it's all communicated through him, and I don't think there are many actors that could have pulled that off, and there are plenty of amazing action stars from this era, from your Stallones or to more everyman types like a Bruce Willis. But I actually don't think they could have done this the way he did this. I genuinely think Arnold really is one of the reasons this works, and that's rare to say, because Arnold is often the reason something might not have worked. I don't think Arnold, and maybe he'll admit this himself, is definitely not one of our finest actors. I can tell you that for certain.
Whoa. Well, Kindergarten Cop's just gone further up the list.
You know,
I have
but
no memory
I think
of whether
when
I've seen it, but just to say, because I'm going to continue that bit for a while now, I think, and I just
Sure.
want to say, I have no actual memory of whether he's good in Kindergarten Cop or not.
I'll spoil it for you now, Chris. He is not.
Put
that cookie down!
Since I was a kid. Huh?
Put that cookie down! Oh no, that's from Jingle All the Way. No, what's the one I'm thinking of?
That's Jingle All the Way.
It's not a tumor.
I haven't seen Kindergarten Cop in years.
It's not a tumor. Which the bit that people always forget from the bit people always forget from that scene, which is just clearly ad-libbed, is the kid's telling him that it might be a tumor, and he gets angry at the kid, so he yells, "It's not a tumor!" But the bit people always forget is there's a pause, and then he goes, "It's not." It's the extra "it's not" that really buttons that one in. Anyway. It's a bad movie. No, actually, that's probably a good movie, but he's not great in it. But but I think in Predator, I think you're right. Like that third act, like his acting is like hugely selling a lot of that. And not to obviously as well diminish the work, the physicality as well of where is it? Kevin Peter Hall, who he's the guy in the Predator suit, and is absolutely incredibly imposing. And also moves in such an alien and unnatural way. He brought a lot to that role that has become iconic. So credit as well to Ken Peter Hall, who did a wonderful job. Not given as much credit, not thought of in the same vein as, which is a shame, because I think he does deserve a lot of the credit for this. Because I think, even in the subsequent movies where he's not been involved, everyone's aping what he achieved in this movie.
Yeah, he's very good. He's a very physical performance. And he does, with no dialogue. Put a pin in that. He does a really good job. Here's a question, Dan.
Yeah.
Do we need the Predator mimicking Arnold's voice and the other guy's laugh at the end?
So, I'm not so sure about the voice, but the laughter, yes, I love that so much. The
laughter's brilliant.
It's haunting. The laughter thing is utterly haunting. I cannot. Every time it plays, it's the way it slows down. So it's like ha ha ha, and then it goes ho 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 ho. It just, oh man, that's whichever editor just went. What if I slowed it down? Would that sound good? Mwah, chef's kiss. Mwah, I love you. You're a genius. It's great.
Arnold takes quite a bit of time to realise a bomb's about to go off, though, doesn't he? I'm like,
yes, he
come
does.
on, Arnold. Like, it's very clear what's happening here.
Yeah, move. It's going beep, 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 beep. I'd be like, yeah, that's probably a bomb, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I shouldn't work out it's a bomb before the commando.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But it does give us the dramatic, moment of him realizing and running away, and a bit of tension at the end. I do love that the Predator's final FU, like as much as the Predator showed all this honor throughout the film, won't hurt somebody who isn't a threat directly to him. Threw down his weapon to go man to man with Arnold. At the end, he's just like, "Ha, fuck you, beep, hit my bomb." Although I will say, I do think there's actually a secondary thought to that. I think that's partially like a protection thing for the Predators as a race, right? If you get killed, you take yourself and your weapons out so they don't fall into enemy hands, is my assumption.
Yeah, I assume so. It's quite clever. Like, there are, as much as this, I don't think this film sets up a franchise, there are definitely lore things which are quite interesting. But the problem is, it's as we've discovered with Doctor Who. Like, the more you get into the lore, the less interesting and satisfying the answers are.
Yeah, it's sometimes better to just sort of let your imagination do that. And also, if you are going to explore the lore, you have to at least then find a story that takes advantage of that. You have to find a story that will draw dramatic tension from the reveal of the lore, not just reveal the lore for the sake of it and then have the characters go, "That's affected me," and not really actually explore how. Because that's another issue that a lot of these things come up against, is they go to explore the lore and they have maybe interesting ideas but don't actually know anything what to do with them. Jurassic World is a perfect example. The new Jurassic World movie came out this week, and I'll tell you this, Chris, if you're excited at the prospect of the premise of the last Jurassic World movie, where the dinosaurs were presumably, seemingly out in the real world now, and the implications of that. Well, this new movie is not interested in dealing with that at all, and that is a problem, because that was the most interesting element of this franchise, of this current trilogy of the franchise, and they've just decided they didn't know what to do with it, so I've ignored it mostly. A couple of little references, but yeah, it's part of the story, but not really.
Didn't they even do like a short film that reiterated that as the point of the new movie?
Yeah. Yep. And it's called Jurassic World. Like, it's the Jurassic meeting, or what? It's like, it was there for the taking, Chris. Oh, anyway, different story. Other very quick little detail that I just wanted to bring up is I do like the Predator heat vision. I think it's a cool idea.
Yep.
I think it's executed. I'm torn on whether they use it fractionally too much at the beginning when they're trying to avoid showing the Predator, so they're trying to give you the idea they're being watched. So they keep cutting to the heat vision, and I wonder if in the early stages they do it a little too much, maybe. But
I think so. But mainly because of that opening shot. Because I think what they're trying to do is go: is it a person with technology stalking them? Is it something connected to the mission? Is it something to do with Dylan? But because of that opening shot, you're like, there's probably an alien in it.
Yeah. I wonder if that opening shot was in the script for this, or if this is they edited the movie together, showed it to an audience. The audience were a bit too like, it was very surprising when an alien showed up, so they just went, all right, I guess we'll do a shot at the beginning that gives people a hint as to where this movie's going.
It could be more subtle though, couldn't it? Like, there's a crash in the distance and people look up and they don't know. Someone's like, where did that come from? Turns out, space.
Yeah, but on the whole, really like this movie. Still holds up for me.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah, I had a really good time watching it, and I'm probably, I'm probably gonna. I might not watch Predator 2. I might save the rediscovery of that for one of these, because that one I don't think I've seen since I was very young. I don't think I've ever really gone back to that. But I maybe.
Thing is, though, Dan.
What was that?
Thing is, you start us on that train, baby. Then, that ends in Alien versus Predator Requiem, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. Which is, like, again, its own sort of insane. But, I'm happy for us to get to those movies eventually. That's fine.
We could end up with a series of rewind reviews that's just the shitty sequels to movies we've watched. We're watching Die Hard, A Good Day to Die Hard. We're watching Alien v Predator Requiem, Home Sweet Home Alone. Like, we're just doing, just knocking off all the shitty sequels.
That could be its own kind of fun. I'm hoping we can sprinkle those in alongside good movies so we don't go mad. But we're going to get to them eventually. That's true. I'm happy with that though. But yeah, I'm probably going to save Predator 2 for a later date. But I probably will, in the build-up to Prey, watch Predators again. I might put myself through the Predator again, even knowing the third act kind of sucks. But yeah, I'm excited for Prey. And I think this movie absolutely holds up. And at the very least, I think if you're going to go and see Prey, which in the UK again is going on Disney Plus, the same platform Predator is on. So if you want to see Prey, you already have Disney Plus, or you're already getting Disney Plus. You might as well watch this. Like, there's no real reason not to. Yeah.
Is it just because I need to pee? Is it time to triv it up, Dan?
It is indeed time, Chris. Say it real loud and real proud.
Let's triv it up.
That was good. So now, Chris,
that was good.
As a result, while you pee, I'm gonna give you some trivia.
Beautiful. I worked it in more apologies for the noise. There's like an obstacle course of fans that aren't on and a light and stuff blocking the door, so it's going to be a bit noisy as I nip out to pee, and I apologise.
That's fine. I think that's fine. So it's probably handy that Chris has gone to pee, because the first part of this trivia is fucking bonkers. So for those who don't know, actually no, it's not the first part. We'll come to that. Actually, we'll start with the simple stuff. So yeah, the original concept for this movie was apparently a bit of a joke. Someone had said that the only person Rocky Balboa had yet to fight was E.T., and that became this script. The script was pitched around Hollywood. The shorthand description used for it was Alien, but set in the jungle. And the original plot had Dutch pitted against the Predator alone. Just most of the movie was, I guess, the third act. But Schwarzenegger himself actually said this was a bad idea once he was on board, and the script was rewritten to inform a team of crack commandos. Schwarzenegger, to play a commando, actually lost 25 pounds before filming even began because he wanted to better fit the role of a special warfare operative that are usually leaner than more muscular, because obviously that kind of bulk is not easy to lug around. So yeah, they're usually about sort of speed and leanness. So Arnold lost some weight as a result. Not a huge amount, because he's still Arnold and still wanted to be huge. Swole, as the kids say. So yeah, that's why that is. Yeah, Chris has just said he's not back at his mic, but of the many words used to describe Schwarzenegger in this movie, lean is not one he would choose, and he's absolutely bang on. So with that in mind, I just want to get to what I think is one of the most insane pieces of trivia about this movie. And you might have discovered this, Chris, when you were doing your own sort of research. Yeah, it sounds like you watched a couple of bits about this online and stuff. Jean-Claude Van Damme was originally cast in this movie to play the Predator. He was not a big name yet. This would have been one of his first feature films. The idea was that a physical action star type, someone with martial arts training, could help make the Predator seem more agile and ninja-like as a hunter. But the original design for the Predator was, and I'll put this mildly, this isn't the trivia, this is my opinion, shit. I mean, god-awful, horrendous, just one of the worst designs I've ever seen for anything. It's horrendous, Chris. It's a big bug monster with a big long face and big beady eyes and backwards legs at the bottom, and it's deeply unoriginal. The costume looked a mess. It didn't look convincing. It was a real piece of shit. But also, it was too cumbersome for Jean-Claude Van Damme to use. It was difficult to use in the jungle because the backwards legs thing meant that he would slip all the time. And Van Damme couldn't make the required movements in it. Now, he constantly complained about it being too hot. He was, numerous occasions he voiced concerns that he would not be appearing on camera in this movie, and that he wasn't going to be able to show off his martial arts. In fact, he kept insisting that the monster do kickboxing to put his skills on display. He also, when he first got to the set, didn't understand that the fully red version of the suit was to create a visual effect, and that that's not how it would look. He thought he was just going to be a big red monster for the first few days. Essentially, he was removed from the film. Now, officially, they claimed that the reason he was removed is because he was too short. He was 5'9", Schwarzenegger, and his team of bodybuilders who were playing the rest of the cast were 6'2" to 6'5". But over the years, he's claimed he left rather than was removed because he refused to do a dangerous stunt. But the reality is, it wasn't working for anyone. The suit didn't work. It looked cheesy, design-wise. He wasn't happy. No one was happy. It was destined for failure. So Van Damme leaves the project, and my understanding, and I couldn't verify this, but I was trying to figure out whether the production halted or not at this stage. It does seem to have paused briefly, but I think they then got back to just shooting the non-Predator stuff while they found some extra budget and gave that money to visual effects legend Stan Winston, who had worked on visual effects and makeup artist Stan Winston, who had worked on the designs for things like Alien, and I think he'd also helped out on maybe the Terminator movies. I can't really. If you look up Stan Winston, he's like every movie from the 80s that you think has really cool visual effects or designs or creature makeup and whatever. Stan Winston probably worked on it. Absolute genius at the game. So they found some extra money. They basically went to the studio and said, "This looks shit. Let's fix it." And the studio went, okay, and gave them money to do that. So there was a small production shutdown. Then they kept filming stuff while Stan Winston came up with what is entirely redesigned the suit, which is now what we know as the Predator. And then during that time, they then found Kevin Peter Hall, who is 7'2".
Wow.
To play the Predator, to be more imposing. And when it all comes together, the entire design sort of provokes way more fear than the original design. And the rest is sort of history, as they say. But apparently that final Predator costume weighed over 200 pounds. I don't know what 100% that is in stone, but that's like a person, I'm pretty sure. And even though 7'2" Kevin Peter Hall was a large and very powerful man, he had to be connected to a bungee rig that constantly had a bit of pull to keep the costume upright and to keep him upright, because otherwise the weight was just too much. And he couldn't move very believably. He moved with too much weight, you could tell. So there's a bungee cord erased from most scenes where he's running around in that costume. And after all of that, wow, Chris, the Predator has 8 minutes of screen time.
You're kidding. Wow. Wow. Seriously?
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Including the bits where they're invisible, or not including that?
Yeah, I wondered about that. It's not specified here. I would be inclined to suggest that's not including the invisible bits, but honestly, it also wouldn't surprise me if it did.
That is crazy.
Right? No. Yeah.
The whole third act is Arnold v Predator. I suppose a lot of that is him setting traps and running away and all that sort of stuff. But
yeah, maybe it doesn't include the invisible stuff. Maybe. But
crazy.
Yeah, it's still mad, isn't it? So, as has become fitting with any John McTiernan movie, Chris, we have to talk about the chaos, because for some reason John McTiernan's movies on set are always a bit of a nightmare. I don't know why. It just seems to be a pattern. I think he either got very unlucky or, brought the chaos with him to do with the way he organised his films. I don't know. But there was a lot of hardships for the actors. The choice to film in the Mexican jungle was a problem. First of all, they sent them the Mexican government, or not government, but the agency that was giving them crew to help crew the movie. They asked for 100 people. They sent 300, which meant hundreds of men just stood around doing nothing while the movie was filming. Lugging them around, not lugging them around, but moving around as a group through the jungle was just absurd. A crew of 300, it was too many to feed and, bring water for, and just practically speaking, it was not working. So eventually they sent home 200 of those 300 men, because it was just getting silly. But also, it was stiflingly hot and humid. The terrain was genuinely rough. They were often having issues with actual venomous snakes, leeches. The scenes at night were in freezing cold temperatures, which was apparently especially hard on Arnold during the later half of the movie when he had to wear the mud, which was very cold and wet. He was warned it would take his body temperature down a few degrees, but he shivered non-stop, so goes the story. And they actually had to use heat lamps to try and heat him up, but then that dried the clay out and made it go all hard, which was also a problem. Yeah, he tried drinking a schnapps mixture to warm himself up, but that just basically got him drunk. Basically, this movie was a fucking nightmare. There's another bit of trivia that appeared 5 times on the IMDb trivia, so people really wanted to know this. But apparently, there was a problem with the irrigation system in the hotel in Mexico, and the water filtration system, I should say, in the hotel in Mexico they stayed in, which meant that they all got the shits through huge portions of the movie. The only 2 people who didn't were director John McTiernan and Arnold Schwarzenegger. John McTiernan chose not to eat any of the food that was there at the hotel, or drink any of the water there. He had, I don't know if he brought stuff in or whatever. As a result, though, he didn't eat very much and lost about 25 pounds, roughly the same amount of weight that Arnold lost to play the role. So this was not a pleasant experience necessarily.
Yeah. No wonder. I mean, I think we found the real reason Arnold's not come back. That movie where everyone got the shits? Nah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fair point. Although I guess, you
I'm
go
good.
now hopefully you'd go, well, things are different. We're a bit, productions aren't quite as guerrilla as they used to be. They used to be a proper, they sort of run in, film and get out, in a very haphazard way. I feel like there are more...
Yeah.
Put things in place to make sure people are comfortable and happy now than there were back then.
Yeah.
You don't hear stories like this anymore, you hear stories from like the set of Star Wars and stuff, or the original like RoboCop, where everyone was miserable and it was a real fucking horrible hard time. And then you just don't hear about that happening these days. So it's either brushed under the rug a bit better, or they are just looked after a lot better these days, which is probably the truth, isn't it?
I still want part human, part robot, all cop. The docu-series about the dramatic retelling of the making of that movie to exist. That's my fantasy project.
It's great. We should. If anyone hasn't, if you check out our RoboCop episode of Rewind Reviews, it's kind of incredible. The story. So Jesse Ventura was delighted to find out from the wardrobe department that his arms were 1 inch bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger's. He suggested to Schwarzenegger separately that they measure their arms, the winner getting a bottle of champagne, which Ventura lost because it turns out Schwarzenegger had told the wardrobe department to tell Ventura his arms were bigger.
Jesus. Why?
I don't know.
Because he knew that would happen, or like
I can't decide if it's because he predicted that Ventura would try and brag about it and then he could show him up, or if he was just trying to give him a little confidence boost.
Well, yeah, it's either
he was
really
just being
nice
supportive.
Yeah, it's either really nice or the ultimate dick move.
A little from column A, a little from column B. Why not? After Dutch impales the bad guy against a wooden post with his machete, he utters the immortal one-liner, "Stick around." Apparently, this was improvised by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. I'm now going to have to commit to closing the window because they've decided to start picking up the rubbish, and all I can hear is beep, beep, beep. This truck is reversing, mate. So I'm gonna very quickly run and do that.
I've been in a humid little sweatbox for the last 2 hours, so I'd feel no sympathy for you. In my opinion, you should have done it a lot sooner.
Well, let me get to the mic. I contend that I got away with it. I think, with the exception of that small child at the very beginning, there has been no further noise from that window. So
yeah, but that just makes me know that I could have got away with it too, and I'm bitter.
Well, again, if there'd have been continuous noise, I would have absolutely shut it. Maybe we'll give it a try next time we do a podcast, Chris. You have your window open and just see how it goes. You're on the second floor as well. You're a little bit further away. So
yeah, exactly. Anyway, right, carry on.
So the Predator's blood was actually made on set using a mixture of liquid from inside a glow stick and KY jelly. So there you go.
Jesus, I bet that was fun to put all over you.
Yeah. Well, the people working on that probably, wasn't very. Yeah, that probably wasn't a fun substance to work with. A large portion of the film was shot under the original title Hunter. If you look on the special edition DVD and you look at the clapperboards, they all say Hunter in the extras. When you do the behind the scenes footage and stuff. It was only later in the production that they changed it. So yeah, there you go. And for a while it was The Predator, and then it became Predator. Ironically, Shane Black took on the title The Predator for his movie later on. Shane Black hated the glasses he was given to wear as Hawkins. He wanted to wear authentic military-issue ballistic glasses, which are actually worn by troops that need glasses in the field. But John McTiernan wanted him to look as nerdy and geeky as possible. And the military ones were a bit too cool to indicate the character was the nerdy one, in quote marks. So yeah, there you go.
Jesus.
Yeah. The distinctive clicking and gurgling sound the Predator makes throughout the movie was thought up by a performer called Peter Cullen. After the producers approached him to give the Predator a voice, he was taken aback because he had no idea that what such a creature would sound like, not to mention that the producers were reluctant to show him a lot of the final designs. So as a result, they eventually had to sort of relent and show him these, and he kind of thought the Predator resembled a dying horseshoe crab. I'd remembered as a kid how he turned one over, or how when he turned one over it would gurgle, which is how he kind of came up with the Predator's sound. But apparently the clicking was kind of a happy accident, because Peter Cullen had just finished doing a King Kong movie and was coughing up blood, basically. because his voice was torn to shreds from doing all the roaring and stuff. So the
Jesus.
clicking was just gentler on his voice than anything else he could do.
God, we've not actually talked about that. That is very effective.
Yeah,
The
no,
clicking in general.
100%. It's such a unique sound. It's so distinct, and again, the work of somebody not being fully appreciated. I talked earlier about the physicality that Kevin Peter Hall brought to the character being mimicked for years to come in other movies. That noise that Peter Cullen put together, is now so synonymous that I'm pretty sure I'd have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure the Prey trailer sneaks the clicking and gurgling
I think it does, yeah.
in to indicate the arrival of the Predator.
I think it does.
So iconic is that sound now. So yeah, 100%. Always shout out those unsung heroes for sure if we can. I think Peter Cullen and Kevin Peter Hall both deserve credit for that, for the work they did there. The stuntman who doubled for Schwarzenegger for the fall into the river blew out his knee performing that particular stunt. He is reportedly the only injury from a stunt during this production, but it is also been said that John McTiernan broke his hand during production, not as a result of a stunt or anything, but I guess he just fell over or something in the jungle maybe. I'm not 100% sure. There's no details on how, but he just kept making the film with a broken hand. So, again, this movie was a shit time for everyone, and that poor stunt actor who blew out his knee.
He had a broken hand, and he wasn't eating anything because everyone else was shitting.
Yeah.
Tough time.
That's the next piece of trivia. I didn't realize I'd got it. I'd kind of ended up with that in here twice. But yeah, most of the cast and the crew suffered from traveler's diarrhea since the Mexican hotel they were in had problems with water purification. The only people who didn't get sick, as previously mentioned, were Arnold and John McTiernan. So there were several pranks. There was lots of pranks happening on the set of this. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but there was tons of frogs put in Arnold Schwarzenegger's hotel room, but the person who did it didn't realize that at the time Maria Shriver, Arnold's fiance, or maybe about to become wife, was in the room, not Arnold. So they weren't discovered by Arnold, they were discovered by Maria Shriver, and she was very upset, and then Arnold for years thought someone else had done it. The whole thing. Jesse Ventura pulled a prank on Arnold by pouring water over himself while at the gym before Arnold arrived. So Arnold would arrive and think that Jesse Ventura was drenched in sweat and thought Ventura was working out longer than he was. So then he started doing his workout sooner, and they both started trying to one-up each other until they were both doing their workouts at 4 a.m., which is just absurd. Apparently, Carl Weathers was a bit self-conscious to work out with, Jesse Ventura and Arnold, so he was working out at like 2, 3 a.m. It's fucking insane. They're all insane. It's just madness. And then there was a prank that got a bit out of hand where Jesse Ventura decided that it'd be funny to keep teasing Arnold about his wedding, which was happening mid-production. They were going to stop for a couple of days for Arnold to do his wedding. So Jesse Ventura kept breaking character mid-shoot, mid-scene to extend the shoot to be a dick because he knew Arnold needed to get away for the wedding.
Nobody's coming out well from any of these stories.
No. Arnold did indeed make it a little bit late to the wedding, but it did not much to the displeasure of Maria Shriver, who thought he'd, was too focused on the movie and not enough on the wedding. So goes the story. Honestly, just a real dick move all around.
Yeah,
from all these people. Yeah, it's not a fun time making Predator. It's so sad to do these and realize that these movies that I loved were just nightmares to make for everyone involved. It's horrible. The set was a bit pranky, so it goes. Fine, I guess, whatever. So the weapon Jesse Ventura uses in this movie is a minigun. It's a weapon most commonly mounted to the side of a helicopter, and a lot of modifications had to be made to make it usable by hand in the way it is in this film. It was powered via an electric cable that was hidden down the front of the character's sort of trousers. The firing rate was also slowed down to 1/3 its normal rate of fire because it was just it's too fast and it ran too hot, and This kind of reduced the consumption of blanks, but also made the spinning of barrels like almost visible on film because it was so fast. The frame rate of the film was slower than so it didn't even look like it was spinning. It was showing so fast because the camera was only catching it every so often. It was rumored at the time that Jesse Ventura had to wear a bulletproof vest because the gun was forcefully ejecting spent cartridges and they were hitting him in the chest. This has actually since been disproven because unmodified miniguns eject out of the bottom, and when you watch the footage, you can clearly see the cases falling out downward. Which means that there's no reason for him to need to do that. The casings weren't coming anywhere near him. Due to health and safety regulations, Schwarzenegger was not allowed to light his cigar inside the helicopter for the shot at the beginning of the movie. As a result, he had an unlit cigar, and a glow was added with special effects in post-production.
Right. That makes sense, I suppose.
Madness. Shane Black, who plays Hawkins, is actually a screenwriter, and producer Joel Silver wanted Black, who was writing Lethal Weapon at the time, close to him to review the script during production. We've already covered that, but it was there. The helicopter pilot seen at the end of the movie is, in fact, Kevin Peter Hall, the actor who played the Predator. John McTiernan gave him this brief on-screen role because his Predator was so, the work as Predator was so exhausting. He did it was we'll get you into the movie. You can be in the movie with your face as well. So that's fun. Body count, 69 people die in this movie, most of them at the beginning of the movie at the hands of Dutch, who kills way more people than the Predator does. Also, victims were one scorpion, one boar, and one predator.
Right. It is amazing how few characters this film has. Like, they do that cheesy montage at the end, and you're like, oh, that's every character from the movie.
Yeah, with the exception of the faceless rebels at the beginning that they slaughter.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, that's all of them. You're absolutely right. Yeah, no, it's a very small cast. It really is. Fans sometimes refer to the self-destruct device used at the end of the movie as a wrist nuke. This nickname probably refers to the size and nature of the explosion itself, but it has never actually been clarified in any, Predator movie whether the device really is nuclear in nature. However, in an early draft of the script for Predator 2, it was specifically mentioned that Dutch had been treated at the hospital for radiation sickness following his showdown with the creature, which is something that you would have gotten if it was a nuclear reaction. But that didn't make it into the movie, so it's not canon, so who knows? Maybe it was nuclear, maybe it wasn't. Mythbusters went to the trouble of checking if you could indeed conceal your body heat from a heat detecting camera like that with mud. Shocker, you can't. It works for a minute, but maybe even less. But eventually, the mud on your skin matches your body temperature very quickly.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be able to avoid heat vision that way.
Yeah. I mean, it is a bit bizarre even when you're watching the film. You're like, really? This worked?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, it's again suspense of disbelief, whatever. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, it's fine. But yeah, you're right. It's if you stop for even a second to think about it, you're like, I'm not sure that would actually function. But there you go.
Yeah.
And then finally, Chris, my world famous segment, which is split into a couple of different quick segments this week, Chris. It's time for Cars Exist. So the only car featured in this movie is a 1972 Jeep CJ5, which is the car they bring Arnold to the that sort of little room at the beginning where he meets with the commander and with Dylan. So it's just a Jeep. The other bits though are that there is of course a helicopter in this movie, Chris, because helicopters exist, and it's a Bell UH-1 Icarus, also known as a Huey. But then, Chris, this blew my mind just on the grounds that someone went to the trouble to do this. In the IMDb trivia, the close cousin to Cars Exist is Guns Exist. In a minute, I'm going to be like, and their cousin to this is marsupials exist, and you're going to have to try and make some sort of noise. No, just guns exist. So very quickly, I'll plow through these. Dutch's main weapon is an AR-15 SP1 slab side M16 fitted with an M16A1 birdcage muzzle flash with an M203 launcher and a perforated forend for the M207. You know, that famous gun.
That classic.
Dylan and the other members of the squad carry a Heckler and Koch HK 94A3 chopped and converted. Blaine's minigun, old painless, is a handheld M134, obviously modified for use as we already talked about, with an M60 handguard, obviously, which is obviously assembled and installed beneath the barrel, and a sort of a rear pistol grip for easier holding. Obviously, we all saw it. We've seen the movie. We understand what guns are. We all know this is what happened. Mac's weapon, of course, is an M60E3. Poncho carries an AN-M5. I didn't need to tell you that, of course, Chris. But you might have not have known it was it had a pyrotechnic discharge built from a Heckler and Koch HK94. Billy's weapon, the final one, which again I don't need to tell you, Chris, but for our listeners, was an AR SP1 fitted with an underbarrel Mossberg 500. Which before we even started recording, first thing Chris said to me was, "Did you notice the underbarrel with the Mossberg 500?" I said, "Yes, Chris, I did," and we had a little laugh.
Yeah. Oh, we chuckled, didn't we?
Amateurs. So there you go. Guns exist. I will add that I will never do that again. I'm not going to make that a thing like cars exist. I just found it so funny that someone had really gone to the trouble to do, like the same way that I found it amusing that someone did, kept putting in what the make of model of cars that were in these movies in. I did find it inordinately amusing, like that someone had gone to the trouble to work out what every single gun was down to their modifications.
Yeah, but if that's your thing, do you know what I mean? Like that makes sense to me. If that's your jam.
Yeah, I guess. Just So I'll never get rid of cars exist. I find it too amusing at this point. But I won't be doing. I probably won't be doing guns exist again. That was just for my own shits and gigs.
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Fair play.
So that's all the trivia. We did it.
Nice. We did it. We recommend it. Yeah. No, I had a good time with this one, Dan.
Mm-hmm. Would you say very quickly? We've done a fair few. What have you got a favourite of this series so far of the films we've watched? Because we're about to get into like Lord of the Rings, and that's gonna be its own thing. And I guess we do have one more choice before that of yours, so I don't know what that's going to be necessarily. But of the movies I forced you to watch this year, when you compare them to the ones you've chosen as well, is there anything that stuck out as the one you've enjoyed most to just sit down and watch?
I mean, I think this is the better film, but enjoyed the most? I had a fucking great time watching Last Action Hero.
I love that's the answer. Even more so than Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I really enjoyed Who Framed Roger Rabbit as well, but yeah, I think so. I think wow. if the question is sheer enjoy, I did really enjoy Who Framed Roger Rabbit as well, which again is a far superior film to Last Action Hero. Yeah, maybe Who Framed or Last Action Hero.
Yeah, I think for me it was either.
What about you?
I think it was Who Framed or Gremlins. I think.
But I mean, you've picked films. The question you gave me was of the films.
Sorry.
Chosen,
I thought I widened it out to just in general as well. But apologies. I think then it's probably Good Will Hunting, right? Because I didn't hate. Yeah. It was somewhere between Good Will Hunting and Liar Liar. I did enjoy watching Liar Liar again. I thought that was surprisingly fun, and I think I described it as one of Jim Carrey's best, straight comedies. Eliminating things like The Truman Show, which is obviously probably one of the best movies he ever did. So I really had a good time watching Liar Liar, but I think maybe Good Will Hunting over Liar Liar. I did really enjoy just sitting down and watching Good Will Hunting again, flawed as it is. So yeah. Yeah, I think of the ones. Yeah, because I certainly can't choose fucking Die Hard 2, can I?
No. Well, let's. So in terms of where we're going next, Dan.
Yes.
I felt I needed to pick something that was almost like the opposite of Lord of the Rings. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Before we go into Lord of the Rings, yeah.
Yeah, before we go into like 6 hour per movie territory, I thought let's pick something that's not very well known. Let's pick something that's very light. Let's pick something that's, just a breezy 90 odd minutes.
Oh, God.
And, Lord of the Rings is one of the most revered, most known film series in existence. I'm picking a film that, Dan, if I'm honest, I'm not sure how we're going to watch it. I think we have to buy the DVD. This film.
I do love it when we choose a movie we literally have to purchase on an outdated format. Great,
yeah,
come on.
You can't even buy it digitally. You have to, it would have to be DVD. I'm picking a movie that I think you and I mentioned it to each other recently. I know you and I have seen it. I'm pretty sure no listener will have seen it. So it really is, opposing Lord of the Rings. I'm picking the 2001 Steve Coogan comedy, The Parole Officer.
Very good. Yes, very good. I have seen this movie, not for a long time. It was
no, me neither. I haven't seen it since we were kids.
It was shot in Stockport, where I grew up. So.
Oh, there we go. Mm-hmm. There we go. I remember. We'll talk more about it, but I rented this from the library. Mate, it might be worth me nipping down to the library to see if they've still got it.
Save you buying a copy from Amazon.
Yeah. I just a complete, opposing choice to Lord of the Rings before we delve into Lord of the Rings. And a movie I know you and I both enjoyed when we were young, but we haven't seen it for years and we haven't watched it critically. So I'm very intrigued about how it's going to turn out.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I'm intrigued. Obviously, we'll see. You never know with a thing like this. Again, this isn't a movie that we both enjoyed, but I don't think it's a movie either of us would describe as being nostalgic for either. So I feel like this is going to be one of those movies where we can actually, if it is shit, which I assume it isn't, but if it really is, I think we'll quite happily say so on this podcast. So
yeah. I remember having a lot of affection for it, but yeah, not nostalgia in the same way as other stuff. I nearly, and you'll be annoyed. I don't know why I'm more open, because this is a sort of film I will choose at some point. But I nearly chose a film that I know you definitely would have liked that fell into exactly the same category. So I nearly chose Frequently Asked Questions About Time Travel.
Oh yeah, that was a fun film. I am slightly scared of rewatching that though.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it holds up though. But I've rewatched that recently, in the last 6 months. We watched that, so I watched that film
as in you and Jess, I assume.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Jess and I. Yeah.
Yeah, because so for listeners, it's a movie I saw when I was at uni. I think had a really good time with, but I've never gone back to, and I'm absolutely scared to death that when I watch it, it's going to be an absolute mess of a film. It's one of the few films where I really think there's a strong chance it actually doesn't work at all, and I just got swept up with it at the time because it was this funny thing that was on a topic that I always enjoy. I always love a good time travel movie, and I'm worried that it will not hold up at all specifically on the grounds, because I assume it's still funny and charming, because that if that worked then, I don't see any huge reason to think that wouldn't work now. I'm worried the entire logic of the movie is completely flawed, messy,
well, the problem is they
nonsense.
do that thing where the logic is fine until they throw away the logic at the end for a joke.
I see. Yeah, that's what I'm scared of. So we definitely will come back to that, maybe in a subsequent season. But that way, what that means now is that we know our entire season's run, Chris. So for listeners, obviously, we've already done Roger Rabbit, Liar Liar, Gremlins, Die Hard, Last Action Hero, Good Will Hunting, and Predator. But coming up, the next 4 weeks. In fact, really, the next 15 weeks are decided. So, for anyone curious what we're going to be doing over the next 15 weeks on this channel, next week will be
the last choice for 15 weeks. I went for The Parole Officer.
Yeah. Oh, well. Feeling very glad I went with Predator.
Oh yeah, if you'd have gone with an obscure film, because I was like, you know what, we've done Good Will Hunting, we've done Predator. We've done some big hitters this year. I felt comfortable with that.
Yeah, 100%. No, I don't disagree with you.
We haven't done, I don't think really, since Quick Change, have we done a truly obscure film. So right. I think this is our first truly obscure films since like episode 2 or whatever Quick Change was.
Yeah. 100% agree. We started as we intended to go on, but then failed to do that. We've chosen a lot of very famous films. I'm happy to do the prologue. I think that's exciting. So that's next week for listeners. But after that, we're going to be doing the Lord of the Rings trilogy, starting with Fellowship, working our way through Return of the King. Extended editions, because I don't want anyone saying you can't criticize that. It makes more sense in the longer version. It doesn't make sense in the theatrical, but if you watch the extended, it's explained. Fine, I'll watch the extended. I like the extended. To be fair, I've not watched the theatrical cuts since they were in cinemas. I've only ever watched the extended cuts over the years, so I'm more familiar with them, to be honest.
For me, because I never really like that as an excuse. Oh, if you watch the director's cut, or if you pick up this obscure comic from 2 years ago, it explains it. So I'd never like that as an excuse. But I just think, that for me, the logic is if we're gonna do Lord of the Rings, let's do Lord of the Rings.
I think Lord of the Rings is the one time I think that excuse is valid, though, because I think most people consider the extended cuts not just like this extra thing that exists, but they consider them to be the definitive versions of those films. That's the difference, isn't it?
To be fair, they also came out. It was part of the plan. From my memory, is those extended cuts were coming out whilst the other film. Do you know what I mean? They'd released the theatrical cut on DVD, and then the extended cut of one would be out before the next film was out. So, I think there's that as well. It's not something they did after the fact or anything. It was very much part of the intent.
And one of my favourite jokes in that franchise, is not in the theatrical cut. So,
well, in that case,
we got to watch them. So the extended cuts of the Lord of the Rings, we're going to do those for 3 weeks. Then, for those of you who are unaware of our plan, we'll be doing a special spin-off series of rewind reviews that is what did we say we were going to call it? Harry Potter and the Rewind Reviews, something like that.
Yes, yeah.
Where we're going to basically do the entire Harry Potter film canon, which is in fact 11 movies at this point, including all 3 Fantastic Beasts movies. Pray for us, because let me tell you, rough going. And for those of you thinking, well, that's fine, you've got 8 really great movies before that, you're wrong. You're very, very wrong.
I'm so fascinated because I am 2 movies in particular I have changed my opinion about, because we did a rewatch in lockdown and I drastically changed an opinion that I thought was set in stone about Prisoner of Azkaban and Goblet of Fire in particular. And I'm fascinated to see what happens when I watch them this time.
So that is the next sort of 15 weeks worth of these, and then we'll come back to doing a sort of a season of rewind reviews where we're back to making the choices. Although that has a trilogy that's dictated in the middle of it as well, the Santa Claus trilogy. So that's going to be fun. So very exciting times. Keep sticking around with Rewind Reviews. We're really enjoying doing this, and of course we'll be getting back to Avatar and the world of Avatar through Korra early next year. So around January. So
there we go. And by the time we've done that, there'll be a whole load of other Avatar content out.
I think we'll be itching to do that when we get to it.
Well, we got to do the live action, and to be fair, probably the movies as well. We'll probably do them as nothing but statics, but release them on the Avatar channel, maybe.
Right.
But we'll deal with that when we 100%. Come to it.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. But so keep your eye on the Avatar feed, because there may be bonus stuff going up between now and then if any of that stuff releases. Although I'm really not sure when the live action Avatar thing is actually going to surface. Whether it is this year or not, I don't know. We've not seen a frame of footage from it yet, so I shrug, who knows, right? And then those animated movies, we only just started getting details of what they are even this week, so I'm not sure when they're coming either. So we'll see. They it may be that they come out once we're in the midst of Korra, and that'll be awkward to work out, but we'll figure it out either way. But thanks everyone for listening. You can get us all the usual places. If you want to hear episodes of this or when we get to it core a week ahead of time, you're welcome to do so by heading over to the Patreon, where we occasionally, and not done for a while, but occasionally release bonus content as well. So that's patreon.com/nothingbutstatic. For as little as $1 a month, you get access to those shows a week early on a special RSS feed that we put out, which is just madness when you look at it, because it's literally the Avatar episodes in the same feed as the Rewind Review episodes, so it just looks like the most schizophrenic feed of a podcast you've ever seen. But it's quite fun. It's a good way to keep up with it if you want to keep up with it. So you can hear us discuss The Parole Officer right now if you go over to the Patreon and do it. Unless you're already on the Patreon, in which case, wait a week. Calm down. Back up.
Yeah, but next week, Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. So, we're all, it's very exciting times. You can also get us on YouTube, youtube.com/nothingbutstaticuk if you want to like and comment and that sort of stuff that helps us as well. That's the way you can sort of support us without money if you wish. You can, find us on your platform of choice, Spotify, iTunes, whatever. Give us a like, give us a heart, give us a poke, give us a review. Those sort of things always help the metrics. It tells those formats and those platforms that you enjoy our stuff, and it makes them go, maybe other people will enjoy that stuff and share it. So even though I hate that system and I hate the fact we have to ask for that, it makes me feel icky in a way that cannot capture in words, but still, it's gross to do, but please help us out, review. That's good. It supports us. Otherwise, the other thing you can keep doing, if you don't want to support us in that way either, just keep listening. We appreciate that too. That's very good.
Yeah,
we enjoy
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, very much.
Who has time to write a review, Chris?
Yeah. Oh, that would be amazing. The reviews really help. Thank you very much.
Who has time? Just listen.
We're really putting the heart into this kind of bit now, because I'm fairly sure no one's listening again until Lord of the Rings.
Sometimes people do say, "Oh, I only watch the episodes of the movies I know," and I do sometimes think back to like choices like Quick Change or even Mouse Hunt, which I think does have a certain Joe's Apartment. Joe's Apartment was pretty.
That's true.
That was a bit off the beaten path, That's
got a bit of a cult following though. Joe's Apartment.
Yes, it has. Yeah, it's true. Or even Short Circuit. Tiny cult following these days, but has a lot very much been forgotten. We've definitely done a few. I'm noticing as a trend though that it's usually me choosing the really obscure film. Looking back,
yeah, but like I say, that's why I'm. That's part of the thinking behind. The Parole Officer. But because I think what's funny about this is, sometimes I think if people haven't seen the film, they'll dig it out and watch it and then listen to that. Like people have told me they do that, but I don't know how many people. I implore you now. I would love it if someone did that. So, and maybe you want to listen, check it's good first. But yeah, I love the notion of someone going to the trouble of getting the DVD, or I suppose there are probably other ways you could do it, and watching this film with us.
Very exciting. So check out The Parole Officer. You never know. You might discover a gem.
We don't know. Might be shit, but we don't know yet.
That's part of the fun. So you can join us for that next week. I'm trying to think of the other stuff I need to cover. I think that's everything. Oh no, Twitter at Dan Doolan, at C Billingham, or at Nothing But Static without the G for the overall show on. I try to post updates on what we're up to on there. We'll see how long I can keep that up before I forget. But for the time being, I am posting again on there. So shrug. That's everything though. Mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk if you have any thoughts you want to send along about any of the things we talked about in today's podcast. But that is everything. I think the other thing as well, Chris, is I'm dragging it out a bit this week to make sure I go into all the detail of how to support us, because I'm also aware the Lord of the Rings ones are going to be so fucking long. I guarantee you, we get to the end of those podcasts and I go, all right, yeah, we're on YouTube and Twitter and whatever. Bye.
They're going to be a nightmare. Yeah. They're going to be, because we can't today we've squeezed this in around other things. We won't be able to squeeze Lord of the Rings at all. So
exactly.
It's going to be.
So let's wrap it up, Chris.
We'll
do the thing.
We'll deal with it. My name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.